Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 39 of my Pyanodon's playthrough. In this episode, we build up various alien life components in preparation for making cDNA. Enjoy. Let's start at the bottom, I guess, and work our way up, because this goes into just about everything. We're going to need some Petri dishes, and it's actually something interesting we can do, because this build is going to require 80 crop facilities all by itself. However, if you recall, I certainly do, that I forgot to click a button in the plan and I did not correctly calculate how much Vrauk food to make. So this build is 5 times bigger than it needs to be. So if you make something and it's twice as big, 3 times as big, 5 times as big, and that's where we're at here. It is too big. I don't mind this aspect of it because it's correctly shutting off. It does take a little bit longer for the resources to go across the belt, but it's not that big of an issue. The main issue is just how big this is. Like 80% of this doesn't need to be there. This whole build could fit in like this space. However, we have a ton of seaweed and a ton of mushrooms that we are not actually using for anything, and we've already built it. So could we use the seaweed? Well, going to the Vrauk food build, correctly sized, we would need to have essentially 20 facilities, and we've got 100, which would leave 80, and this build basically needs 80. So we have essentially the perfect amount of seaweed here. And if in the future we need more mushrooms, we can use them. If I had robots, I probably would just tear them apart, but it took a while to build these by hand, and I don't really want to do that again. And this can essentially be done anywhere, so we could just use these facilities and build it around here. What is that right there? Did I build something there at some point? Huh. It looked like some kind of progress bar, but it was just a perfectly shaped and positioned cliff. I didn't know what it would be a progress bar of, but it was there. And I am transitioning the factory to manufacturing everything we need in central locations. So let's do that with our Petri dishes here as well. And technically our build needs 5, but let's just do 6 because it'll look nice and we've already done it here. We do kind of want to do all of these in a central location because as we add more liquid glass to our network, the extents are going to be a problem. So keeping everything in a central location means that a web of pipes can all be going in the same direction towards the center, and then they all get made there. Okay, we've done this before and it's pretty straightforward, so make lots of noise and let this thing go. It's absolutely going to use up all of our liquid glass while it's going, but it'll fill up before we know it. And you can definitely see the advantage of having one centralized build for all of this, because it's just super dense and clean rather than having little builds all over the place. And this is mostly a logistics thing, that when we built this before, we didn't have caravans, so the idea of putting all these things on belts wasn't very appealing. I kind of don't like how this is just sort of sticking out here instead of tucked in somewhere else, but oh well, it's built now. Although this is only half of what we need. Luckily, it's something that can be easily copied. Thought it looked a little small. Okay, that should be most of it. So in goes the steam, in goes the seaweed. Let's make sure the agar machines properly turn off. So they run to make one, yep, and they stop, because each one's machine they are supplying has exactly one in it, and they turn off. And in goes the Petri dishes. Make sure it gets supplied exactly with one. Sure seems like it, we're not even seeing it appear, because they're keeping up perfectly. And then the Petri dishes get put on the far side. And let's set this to a whitelist of the Petri dishes, because technically the spoilage will be on this belt too. If there is any. I don't think this system is going to make very much, because it's direct inserted, which always minimizes the amount, plus it's one item into one item, so there's no remainders that will exist. And this is going to slow down when the Petri dishes run out, so it will be causing a little bit of spoilage, but seems pretty good. Not much to really see here on the power network, because it's mostly a liquid fuel process. That much is done, and looking at the builds that use it, we could potentially deliver it to science here, but science is using it to make the substrate, which we will also make elsewhere. and it's being sent here for the moss samples, which will also be made elsewhere, so we actually aren't going to need to make it anywhere else. So since we're thinking about it, let's just remove the machines because we might want those machines for our next builds. And honestly, this whole build and all of its supporting resources can probably be removed, even though it's totally going to trash our inventory to do it. All of this is going to be replaced with much better setups and much better logistics, so we definitely won't be building it the way we did here. So there's nothing worth copying. Hey, look at that. We've got a second Mark II Vrauk. So we'll pick up the Mark II, put it in there, drop the extra in there, and let it go. We had to run it 309 times to get our 2. So looking at the recipe to start making them the fast way, we need 2 adults in order to make the cocoons, and there's a 99% chance of us getting both adults back. And then we need 1 adult to make the cocoons turn into adults, and there's a 95% chance we get them back. So technically we only need 2 to get this started, but we're going to have to keep bouncing the Vrauks back and forth. Whereas if we have 3 and we use an inserter to count, we could make sure that each machine only has the minimum number. So I kind of want to wait for it to complete one more time. So we only have 1 setup making the Petri dishes, and just looking for assemblers. That cut quite a few of them out, so we only have 5 left in the factory. And looking at this build, it's got 12 biocrud. Still hasn't filled up all the way on Petri dishes, but at least it's not making a ton of crud. Also, there's no steam, so something might have gotten disconnected. No hot air. And yeah, we just ran out because this setup isn't actually set up to make hot air directly. It's only made as a byproduct of making power, and if we're not making very much power, then we're not going to get any. But also the steam is gone. That's actually really bad. The factory is about to go dark. So what happened? I'm trying to very precisely get all the valves on that power plant set up so it'll work correctly without brownouts and without any circuits. It looks like a water pipe got disconnected. That would be a funny thing to be out of, and it's right there. There we go. This is a interesting ash buffer I put in here just because 1 belt of ash sometimes when the power plant runs might not be enough. But on it goes. The power has returned. Okay, well, that's one part of this build done. Let's do some other glass related items, such as the glassware. Let's briefly unhook the dishes so we'll have enough molten glass and hot air to see how glassware works. So in goes the rubber to make stoppers. And it's pretty cool that the stoppers actually have different graphics as well. And the glassware also has different graphics. We could just direct insert this, but then we wouldn't see all of the glass. But yeah, seems good. It's going to have to run a while to catch up, but it has the time, so we'll let it go. But now, we don't need this stopper making machine, or this glass machine. In fact, pretty much everything that goes into this building is going to be made elsewhere, and delivered by caravan. We still need to make those other components. What it does mean is we need the spreadsheet to calculate how much of this is going to be for glassware and how much for the substrate. And instead of looking at our build here, this just says what the maximum is for making cDNA. The numbers we want actually come from the PyScience pack. And what's funny is we actually don't need any of this stuff anymore. Hopefully I don't regret removing it, but it's being made elsewhere now and we don't need to worry about it. All that matters is this. So glassware, substrate, we need 0.2 of glassware and 1.2 of the substrate, and they both stack in 100. And of the 3 solutions, it looks like the standard rounding created the best result at 34 minutes, and the other 2 were 33, so it's a pretty small difference, but nonetheless, it is the best one. So we need 5 of glassware and 25 of substrate. That said, I kind of want to wait to actually set up the caravan because we don't have the other stop set up yet, and I don't want him wandering around the factory until we're ready for him to do so. What else do we want to do? Well, the other glass related thing is the optical set, and this is a new process. It doesn't require very much, but nonetheless it does require things. Oh, I'm thinking we can fit it in here. So how to do this, it is a little annoying that it needs the smallest amount of hydrogen and the smallest amount of borax. We are going to need borax for more and more things in the future. Question is it worth sending down here? Well, when we get better copper, we're going to be using it, which means it could be coming all the way down here, or from another source. Yeah, I think we do need to send it down. Having a caravan running around for half a borax a second seems really bad, and this is going to be our first actual use of hydrogen for something productive. It's pretty easy to say, let's just run another caravan for it, but as the factory expands, we're going to need more and more of these resources for other things, so it would be nice if it's already available when that time comes. Luckily, since we've been pulling out unnecessary belts, it means that the space exists for more things. In goes the hydrogen, in goes the borax to make the diborane. And I kind of care that that inserter isn't fast enough. It doesn't matter, but just want the machine running at maximum speed if possible. And then in goes the water to make boric acid. And then that gets shot into the high pressure furnace, which also takes coke to make our boron trioxide, which gets inserted into the glassworks, in addition to hot air and molten glass, and our fuel. And it's getting really crowded in here, but everything fits. And achievement unlocked. Looking good, making all of our glass-related items now, and reasonably fast to boot. So we're just gonna have to let it build up a buffer. It'll take a while, but what else is it gonna do until we've got it all ready to go? Okay, we've got some good news here that we got an extra 2 Vrauk Mk2s. So that took 459 crafts to essentially get 4 of them. And I think we have enough now to get this process started for real. And we're going to need to make them somewhere, and this is as good of a place as any. So let's just unhook everything for now. So there we go, we have most everything we need except for the Vrauks. And down here will be the Vrauk Mk2 chest, where we have both inserters going in and going out, because both processes take in and give out Vrauk Mk2s. But we only want to fill up each machine to the minimum amount necessary for the craft to run. So we want read contents including crafting, and that's less than 2. And same thing, but this recipe only requires 1. And we actually probably want to have a second chest beyond this, because this is kind of like the buffer chest that keeps everything running. But then the final chest here will be our actual Vrauk storage, because we want to have like a minimum amount of Vrauks in there so the process can run. So how about something like 5? Let's just go with 1 stack for now. I think we're mostly good. The only other thing is that the cocoons need to make it from one side to the other. Okay, let's see if this works. If we dump all of our Vrauk Mk2s in here. There we go. It left 1 inside the buffer, and this machine is running. It is a relatively slow craft when you're watching it, but we do want to make sure that it actually works. Also, the productivity bonus we got from our turd selection also applies to growing the Mk2s, so this will make this process a little better. Once we have slightly more Vrauks in buffer, we can then remove this limit and just let it fill up to the maximum of the machine. So that way it's constantly running and it won't shut off every time it finishes a craft, which is what we're going to see here, that it's going to turn off for a second until the Vrauks get back into the machine. On a 60-second craft, it really doesn't add up to much, but nonetheless, it does add up. So there we go. It started again, and the cocoons are making it to the other side. But of course, we only get 7 cocoons out of this one at maximum, and we did get the maximum roll, but it needs 8 for this to run. But anyway, we'll let that go. As far as our cDNA, what do we want to work on next? Well, we finished with glass, so how about let's do the other thing that's a little weird, in the sense where it's done in a different location. Super heavy on rubber, but when you look at the resources, this is actually a main bus item. That a lot of this stuff is already on the main bus, so let's do that. So looking at the equipment chassis, the only thing that it goes into is making laboratory instruments. So we can just direct insert these. And we do have the tin right here, so it would be really awkward, but we could grab it from this depot. Okay, our buffer now has 4 Vrauks in there, and now we can use them to start speeding up this whole process. And since we don't have enough cocoons, those are the modules we should upgrade first. And let's just leave one Vrauk in there in case one of them gets lost. But in doing that, we actually have a positive amount of both sides, so now they are more evenly balanced. But nonetheless, we will want to max out these machines just to get as many of them as possible. Okay, I think we've got everything we need here. So there's the equipment chassis, a relatively slow craft, and then in goes the rubber, spare parts, and optical sets. And they're pretty cool. There's lots of different graphics for all the laboratory bits, so it's all kinds of very lab-looking items. But yeah, there it goes, consuming tons of rubber that we won't be able to keep up with, and this will fill up. And we have a few more Vrauks, so more upgrades. Okay, making pretty good progress. We're starting to get to the point where we might want to decide, does everything else get done in the same area? Probably, because there's no reason all this stuff couldn't. And thinking about where to do it, we kind of have two options, and it all comes down to logistics. One, we can put it next to Petri Dishes, which we're making a lot of, 3.23 a second, or we can put it next to our Vrauk setup here that is making 1.8 cocoons. And out of every ingredient that goes into what remains, the numbers that are the biggest are going to be the Petri Dishes, so we should probably do this where the Petri Dishes are. And what's interesting is I was expecting to move Petri Dishes around, but if we don't, then it means we don't actually need to have this caravan outpost here. Nonetheless, we probably still want it anyway, because it will function as a buffer. So even though no caravans are going here, it's probably worth keeping. And at some point, we probably will be sending some caravans here. Alright, time to start picking things to do. I guess we will do the gene samples. Let's do them on the other sides of these buildings and try to line them up with the bottom because we might want to have space at the top for belts and things. And our almost full belt of moss. And there it goes. We've done that before, but not at this scale. And we certainly have junk in our inventory. So far, so good. Let's do the biosamples now. And something to consider is this is going to require a full belt of flora, which is entirely separate from any other process, so we need to find a patch. Certainly this one has been in the middle of our factory for a long time, but I kind of like this one being there to replace our original patch when it runs out. So looking at all the patches, we do have this really awkward one next to the water, but that'll work. There we go, that is a lot of flora. Make sure each side can do 7.5. I won't worry about looping any spoiled flora back to this mine. We'll just put it in the system we already have set up and it'll go back to this one, and it should be fine. We probably do want to have some kind of logic to prevent this flora from just running all of the time. The average production rate is probably going to be much, much slower than the maximum because this is really only going to run when we need these items, and right now it's just for growing creatures essentially. So it's going to be a lot of spoilage that's happening. We'll probably want to have some kind of buffer for this. We don't need to read the resources. If biosample is less than 1000, all of those will turn on. We also need to supply the empty containers with this one factory here, which is the limiting factor of the whole build, and it actually requires 4 inputs. However, since it's the only building, we can just use a caravan outpost and just directly insert everything that we need. And in total that's going to be 5 items, which is basically 5 inserters, and that's what we have room for. Well, this is absolutely something for the spreadsheet. It's not too complicated, you could probably figure it out without the spreadsheet, but nonetheless, the sheet exists, so let's use it. Steel, glass, lead and titanium. 1, 1, 1, 2. And the stack size is 100 for all of them. This was a good thing to test because now we see the first situation where it creates an error. Specifically, that the way that it rounded meant that we only got 29 stacks instead of the 30 that we potentially have. Of course, we could just use the 29. But nonetheless, if the caravan has 30 slots, let's use 30. But for example, if we came in here and selected 29, then suddenly it's fine. But I'm glad this came up because we can kind of show what happens when it doesn't come up with a solution. And the swap option got even worse because it only went down to 27 because all of these were equal in size, so it dropped a stack off of all of them. And looking at all of this, we can manually adjust it by putting a stack back on one of the items, and looking at the error amount, it's pretty clear that the one that is short is titanium. So if anything is going to get a stack, it's going to be that. So we say 1, and the way that it works is it's adjusting the rounding column, not the swap column. So by doing that, we get our 30 stacks. And the error rate is 0, because if we actually look at ideal stacks here, we could have just done that. But specifically, it's because it's doing a little bit of math that it didn't attempt to use ideal stacks, because pretty much never is the ideal stacks actually going to be what fills up the caravan. It just so happened to be that these numbers were absolutely perfect. But nonetheless, doing that fixes it. We have our ideal solution. Every item will last for 10 minutes, and we can pick any of them to be the limiter of the caravan. And there we go. And that should be the schedule. Meanwhile, we can check up on the Vrauks. It's not quite exponential growth when it comes to making the Mark IIs, but nonetheless, it is getting faster. And yeah, we're already starting to get a couple extras here. We have 20. So at this point, we can just fill up every slot, because why not? And also, we can remove the controls here. Just let it fill up all the way. And we have 7 of them to be used however we want to. And we need to make about 400 of them in total in order to populate this whole setup. And I imagine that's going to take some amount of time, but that's okay. We don't have a huge need for them right now. Items are here, and he left. So we'll see that work. Of course it's fine. And we've got some extra bio containers to drop off. In goes the flora. Incubator is a really quiet building. So many of the Pi buildings are so loud. And yet the incubator is very quiet. It's a very cool looking building with the whatever those are coming up and coming down. It's actually quite a bit of animation. Flora is making it to the back. So let's say we filled up on biosamples and we had this many. That is sending the signal to the mines, and now they should shut down. And they have. So that'll be a lot less spoilage. Luckily you can fast replace the modules like that, so you don't actually have to go in and do them manually. Let's do basic substrate. It is the odd item out because it's not in a tube looking thing. And it's also fairly large, at least with the microorganism mines. And even with this fast tile and our grappling hook, it still takes a while to walk around the factory. But I was going to come here because we have some extra machines and none of them need to run now because it's all going to be delivered in this one outpost. Oh wow, this whole belt of the mine ran out. Yeah, we're definitely getting to the point now where output out of this is getting quite limited. We're at 35%. So what I've been doing is just unhooking the belts and just leaving them empty. Because the power plants prioritize certain belts over other ones, without a giant balancer in here, it's hard to evenly use the mine. So the way the lesser belts get used is just by letting things clear out and forcing them to use other belts. It will decrease the power plant's total output. What's kind of funny is that we may end up doing the power plant upgrade simply because there's less belts of coal here. And I really don't want to run a bunch of extra belts down here, especially considering how busy it is up here already. I mean, we could, but I don't know how long this power plant is actually going to be here, so I don't want to commit further to it. Looks like all of the flora shut off properly. There's a little bit stuck in the machines, but that's okay. It'll eventually get sent where it needs to. And if we do something like that, it will get priority. So of course this thing is going to run now because we have none of the basic substrate, but the decay item is simply Petri dishes again. So we can just let this run in a circle. We do want to make sure that the dishes actually make it up to this machine without spoiling, and they should. It's not like it's that long of a belt. It's funny though, watching the decay increase in real time. But they all come up here, they go bad, and get inserted away. Let's put the cellulose machines on the other side, just to minimize the length of the belt. Now we just need a tiny bit of moss. Okay, let's see if this works. In goes the sodium hydroxide, in goes the wood. So there it goes. Want to make sure there's no slowdowns. The build is limited on this one machine, so it should be going full blast. And it sure seems to be. The other thing we want to make sure is that all of this shuts down when the buffer chest gets full. So let's just block that off for now and see what happens when you fill up on the substrate. Every machine that's creating decay items should shut down when that happens. And there we go. And there it goes again. Now we just need to hook it up to science, and it's kind of funny how sad this looks because all of the inputs are coming from somewhere else now. So all it is just the research center sitting here. But that's fine. And he's not completely full yet, but let's just send him on his way so we can see him drop off the items. Instead of checking up here, I believe we actually need to check down there. Yeah, there we go. That's going to work a little better. But he dropped off his items, and now we're making the science item somewhere else, and it's just being dropped off here, and that definitely simplified a lot of this. Like, this is actually our entire science build right now because of everything being made elsewhere. But there we go. Looking at the cellulose, it is pulsing, where this little section of belt functions as a small buffer. So as it empties here but works its way there, the machines are allowed to turn on, and then they create more cellulose than is needed. So they start backing up, and once they do, it starts pulsing the input resources. So yeah, seems good. It's working as well as can be expected. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we start reprocessing biocrud, as well as actually start making some cDNA. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.